Dex Karen had reached that very specific level of exhaustion where the universe itself started to feel personally offensive. The cargo bay lights were painfully bright. The station's gravity somehow felt a fraction heavier than regulation. And the crates, those miserable crates, seemed to multiply every single time. He blinked out. His exosleeves whirred softly as he guided another container into position. The station AI kept chirping polite reminders about optimal lifting posture, which Dex ignored purely out of stubborn principle. He had been on duty for 16 hours straight, powered almost entirely by recycled coffee and a protein bar that tasted like compressed disappointment. So, when someone walked past him in the open hangar, his brain failed to file the proper paperwork before his mouth decided to act. "Nice ass," Dex muttered casually, not even looking up from the manifest pad. The words drifted out into the vast metal chamber light, careless and completely disposable. He expected nothing, maybe a scoff, maybe silence. Instead, the footsteps stopped. The quiet that followed was the kind that pressed inward, as if the entire station had leaned closer just to listen. Dex frowned. His thumbs hovered above the pad as he slowly looked up. The woman had turned around. She wore fitted, station workout gear, practical, simple, the kind worn by people who actually used the gym instead of posing near it. Her skin was pale, almost luminous under the hangar lights. Blonde hair was pulled back into a practical tie, with loose strands framing a calm, composed face, the kind of face Dex had only seen on people who were used to rooms going silent the moment they walked in. And then there were her ears, longer than human, gracefully tapered, rising through her hair with absolutely no attempt to hide them. Stomach dropped straight through the deck plating. "Oh," he said, brilliantly, "Queen Morell of the Stellar." Alliance looked at him in silence, even without a crown, even without guards, even without the flowing ceremonial nonsense Dex had only ever seen on broadcasts. She was unmistakable. You didn't rule 14 star systems by accident, and you didn't spend 15 years negotiating ceasefires and trade alliances without learning how to look at someone like they were a puzzle you fully intended to solve. Dex's mind sprinted through every possible outcome: arrest, massive fines, public apology, tour, ejection into space, probably paperwork heavy, even in the vacuum. "I am so sorry," he blurted, straightening so quickly his exosleeves squealed in protest. That was extremely inappropriate. "I didn't I wasn't didn't know." She stepped closer. Dex froze. The distance between them shrank to just a few meters. He suddenly became painfully aware of the oil smear on his sleeve, the faint smell of coolant in the air, and the fact that he was absolutely not dressed for what could technically be called a historic moment. "Say it again," she said. The words were quiet, calm, curious. Dex stared at her, convinced he had finally slipped into a hallucination caused by protein bar poisoning. "Sorry," he said, her long ears tilted slightly forward. Subtle motion you'd miss if you weren't paying attention. Her expression wasn't angry, it wasn't amused. Either it was focused, curious in a way that made Dex feel like he had accidentally pressed a button he didn't know existed. "What you said," she continued calmly. "Repeat it." Dex let out a short, panicked laugh that feels medically unwise. "I am not offended," Morell replied. "If I were, security would already be present and you would be on the floor. That's comforting," Dex said weakly. She studied him for another moment. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. Not the polished, diplomatic smile Dex had seen on countless broadcasts, but something smaller, real, like it had been sitting unused for a very long time. 15 years, she said, as if continuing a thought he hadn't heard. That is how long I have been queen. In all that time, every word spoken to me has been careful, filtered, aimed. She stepped closer into the loading lights, which traced clean lines across her face and caught gently on the edges of her ears. Your comment, she continued, was crude, poorly timed, socially disastrous. Dex nodded enthusiastically. I specialize in those. And yet, Morell said softly, it was honest. The hangar suddenly felt much smaller. Or maybe Dex's entire world was just rearranging itself. No one speaks to me without knowing who I am, she continued. No one forgets. Dex swallowed. Trust me, he said. I will never forget this moment as long as I live. Possibly longer. I might haunt myself with it. That earned him a soft laugh. The sound echoed lightly through the massive metal chamber. So, she said gently, folding her hands behind her back with a relaxed posture that almost felt rebellious. Say it again. Speak to me as you would anyone else. Not a queen. Not an alliance. Dex looked at her, really looked at her. A woman standing alone in a cargo bay. Long ears marking her as different. Power resting on her shoulders like an invisible weight she had briefly chosen to set aside. He exhaled slowly. Well, he said carefully, a hint of a grin creeping in. You do, in fact, have a very nice ass. For one suspended heartbeat, the universe seemed to stop breathing. Then Queen Morell laughed. The sound of Queen Morell laughing did something strange to the hangar. It wasn't loud. It wasn't explosive, but it echoed just enough that Dex instinctively glanced around, half expecting alarms to start blaring or security drones to drop from the ceiling, demanding an explanation for unauthorized joy. Nothing happened. The station simply kept humming. Cargo belts continued, sliding crates along rails as if a queen laughing at a cargo handler was just another normal part of interstellar logistics. Morell briefly covered her mouth, a reflex she seemed almost embarrassed by, then lowered her hand. Her long ears flicked backward, then forward again, as if recalibrating. I had forgotten what that sounded like, she said. My voice? Dex asked. Because I can assure you, he thought, that's not something anyone misses. Laughter, she clarified softly. Mine. Dex shifted his weight, suddenly aware that he was standing in front of one of the most powerful beings in known space and had just successfully complimented her. Backside without dying. For the record, he said, this is not how my day usually goes. I imagine not. She looked around the hangar, taking in the towering freight stacks, blinking indicator lights, and the distant shimmer of a cargo skiff locking into magnetic clamps. Do you always speak this freely here? Only when my brain clocks out before the rest of me, Dex admitted. Normally, I keep my mouth safely behind several layers of common sense. She studied him with renewed interest, up close. Dex noticed small details he'd missed before, the faint lines at the corners of her eyes, not decorative, the steady rhythm of her breathing, and the subtle movements of her ears reacting to sound, emotion, even thought. They were expressive in ways human faces simply weren't. And Dex had the strange feeling they were telling her things she wasn't saying out loud. Tell me something, Morell said, When you spoke earlier, what did you think I was? Dex snorted before he could stop himself. Honestly, some overachieving gym rat with a personal trainer and a sponsorship deal. Her brows lifted. I understand only half of those words. That's fair, Dex said. They're mostly insults. She smiled again, slower this time. You did not see a queen? Nope, Dex admitted. If I had, I would have panicked quietly, like a professional. Instead, you panicked loudly. I contain multitudes.